expression was tight, as if bracing for impact. What he said next left everyone speechless. "I'm sorry, Mr. Trump, but we cannot serve you here." And just like that, everything changed. You won't believe what happens next. Donald Trump had been here before, countless times, in countless cities. He knew the routine. A polite greeting at the door, a quiet escort to a secluded table, a menu full of fine dining options he'd seen 100 times before. It was just another night, another meal. But as he stepped out of his vehicle and adjusted the cuff of his navy suit, he had no idea that this night would be anything but routine. The moment he walked in, a shift rippled through the room. The soft murmur of conversation didn't stop, but it changed. Tones lowered, whispers grew. Some patrons pretended not to notice him, while others turned to steal quick glances. A few even reached for their phones, subtly positioning their screens to snap a photo without seeming obvious. The restaurant staff at the front hesitated for a beat too long before stepping forward. A hostess, her smile practiced and professional, faltered slightly as she met his gaze. "Good evening, Mr. Trump," she said, her voice carefully neutral. Trump gave a small nod. "Table for one," he said simply. The hostess hesitated, her hands tightening around the menu she was holding. Before she could respond, another figure emerged from the back. A middle-aged man in a tailored suit, his expression unreadable. He wasn't a waiter. No, this was someone in charge. The owner, or at least the manager. The air between them was thick with something unspoken. The man took a step forward, clearing his throat. His posture was stiff, his jaw tight. Every waiter, every guest within earshot, suddenly seemed frozen in place, waiting to see what would happen next. Trump, unaware of the tension building around him, kept his stance relaxed, hands in his pockets, waiting for the usual routine to continue. But then the man took a breath and spoke. "I'm sorry, Mr. Trump," he said, his voice carefully measured, "but we cannot serve you here tonight." For the first time, the entire restaurant fell silent. Every pair of eyes locked onto Trump, waiting, watching, because in that moment, everyone knew this wasn't just another meal. This was something much bigger. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The soft clinking of silverware, the hushed murmurs of conversation, all of it vanished under the weight of those words. Trump remained still, his expression unreadable. He had been in countless situations where people disagreed with him, where tension hung thick in the air. But this was something else entirely. He glanced at the man in front of him, studying his face. The restaurant manager, or maybe the owner, stood firm, his hands clasped in front of him, his posture tense. He wasn't nervous. No, there was something else in his stance, something deliberate. "I'm sorry," the man repeated, but there was no real apology in his voice. "But we have a policy." Trump raised an eyebrow. "A policy?" The man gave a small nod, glancing around as if trying to find the right words. We reserve the right to refuse service," he said carefully. "And in this case, we've chosen to exercise that right." The words hung heavy in the air. Around them, diners sat motionless, their eyes darting back and forth between Trump and the man denying him entry. Some looked smug, others uncomfortable. A few were pulling out their phones, recording the moment, sensing that whatever happened next would make headlines. Trump exhaled slowly, adjusting the cuff of his suit. "So let me get this straight," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You're refusing to serve me. Not because I don't have a reservation, not because the restaurant is full, but because of who I am." A waiter standing nearby shifted uncomfortably, his grip tightening around the tray in his hands. The manager didn't respond right away. He took a breath, as if trying to summon confidence, and then squared his shoulders. "We believe in maintaining a certain environment here," he said, "one where all guests feel comfortable." Trump let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. "And you think my presence makes people uncomfortable?" The manager hesitated, glancing quickly at a nearby table where a couple whispered to each other, avoiding eye contact. "Some of our patrons have expressed concerns," he admitted. The excuse was weak. Everyone in the room knew it. Trump's security detail shifted slightly, waiting for a signal from him. A lesser man might have exploded in anger, might have demanded an explanation, might have turned this into a scene. But Trump? He didn't flinch. He looked around the restaurant, taking in the faces of the people watching him, some amused, some stunned, some waiting for him to lash out. Instead, he did something no one expected. Silent room. The manager looked confused, unsure of how to respond. He had expected a fight, an argument, maybe even a lawsuit, but Trump just stood there, smiling. And then, without another word, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone and made a call. What happened next would leave the entire restaurant speechless. A thick, uneasy silence stretched across the restaurant. The manager shifted his weight, his confidence wavering as Trump stood before him, calm and composed. The former president didn't yell, didn't demand answers, didn't make a scene. Instead, he simply pulled out his phone and with a flick of his thumb, dialed a number. No one could hear who was on the other end, but Trump's voice was clear. "Hey, it's me," he said, pausing for a moment. "I need a favor." The manager swallowed hard. The waitstaff exchanged nervous glances. Even some of the diners, still pretending to sip their wine or check their phones, leaned in slightly, trying to catch every word. Trump didn't look at the manager as he spoke. Instead, he scanned the restaurant, his gaze moving from table to table, taking in the faces of people who had either stayed silent or smirked at his rejection. Some eyes darted away, others watched him with curiosity, as if waiting to see what a man like him would do next. "Yeah," Trump continued, his tone still measured. "I need a venue, tonight, something nice." Another pause. "Bigger than this one." The manager's breath hitched, his fingers curled into a tight fist at his side. This wasn't how he had expected things to go. Trump nodded slightly as he listened to the voice on the other end. "Perfect. Make sure it's exclusive," he added, smirking slightly. "And let's make sure everyone hears about it." With that, he ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. The tension in the room thickened as he turned his full attention back to the manager. "Well," Trump said, adjusting his cuff, "I appreciate the honesty." The manager blinked. "Sir, Trump held up a hand, silencing him. "You don't want me here, and that's fine. It's your place, your choice," he said. "But here's the thing, you're not just turning away me." He gestured around the restaurant. "You're turning away business, and if there's one thing I know, it's that business doesn't forgive bad decisions." A nervous murmur rippled through the restaurant. Some diners began whispering, sensing that something big was unfolding. The waitstaff stood frozen, unsure if they should step in or stay back. Then, in a move that no one expected, Trump pulled out a thick stack of cash and set it on the front podium, right in front of the manager. "Since you won't be serving me tonight, I figure you might need this to cover the losses." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it, just confidence. "Because after tonight, I don't think you'll have quite as many customers." The manager's face went pale. He had wanted to make a statement, to show that his establishment could take a stand, but suddenly it felt like he was the one losing control. Trump turned on his heel and walked toward the exit. But before stepping out, he glanced back over his shoulder. "Enjoy the rest of your night," he said smoothly. "I know I will." And with that, he was gone. What happened next would turn this quiet night into a story that the entire world couldn't stop talking about. The heavy restaurant doors swung shut behind him, but the weight of Trump's departure lingered inside. The staff remained frozen in place, the manager's face a mix of shock and regret. The once lively hum of conversation had been replaced by hushed whispers. Diners exchanged glances, some smirking, others uneasy. Something told them this night wasn't over. Outside, Trump walked calmly toward his SUV, but he wasn't leaving. Not yet. He leaned against the vehicle, his fingers tapping lightly against his phone screen. Within seconds, he sent a message. "Change of plans. Let's make it big." His security detail exchanged subtle nods, already sensing the shift. They had seen Trump handle conflict before, but this wasn't just about being denied a table. This was about turning rejection into opportunity. Moments later, the response came in. Confirmed. Everything's set. Trump smirked. This was going to be good. The tension refused to fade. A few guests hurriedly paid their checks, eager to leave before the fallout began. Others stayed put, glued to their phones, waiting for social media updates. The waitstaff whispered amongst themselves, some nervous, others secretly excited. The manager, still standing at the podium, tapped his fingers anxiously against the wood. "Oh my God," she murmured, eyes widening as she held up her phone. "Look at this." A man at the next table turned his screen toward his friend. "You've got to be kidding me." The manager's phone buzzed in his pocket. He hesitated before pulling it out. What he saw made his stomach drop. Breaking news. Trump announces exclusive dinner event after being denied service. He quickly scrolled through the article, his heart pounding. Reports were already surfacing that Trump had booked a larger, more exclusive venue just a few blocks away. And the guest list? It was open. Anyone from the restaurant who wanted to leave was welcome to join him instead. His hands tightened around his phone. This was bad, very bad. Outside, luxury black cars and SUVs began lining the street. Chauffeurs stepped out, opening doors for some of the wealthiest and most influential figures in the city. The flashing lights of paparazzi cameras started appearing at the edges of the block, drawn by the unfolding drama. Trump, still leaning casually against his car, watched as people slowly started to trickle out of the restaurant. Some left out of curiosity, others because they knew this was about to become the event of the night. Then something truly unexpected happened. A waiter, one of the younger staff members, stepped outside, glancing around before hesitantly walking toward Trump's SUV. He removed his apron, folded it neatly, and tucked it under his arm. "Sir," he said cautiously, I'd like to work for you tonight." Trump grinned. He turned to one of his security team members and nodded. "Get him a ride." One by one, others followed. Some were staff members who no longer wanted to work under a manager who made that kind of decision. Others were customers, businessmen, investors, even influencers, who had no interest in eating at a place that turned away one of the most powerful men in the country. By the time the restaurant manager realized what was happening, it was too late. The restaurant, once packed, now had empty tables. The waitstaff was scrambling, the atmosphere tense. Meanwhile, just a few blocks away, Trump stepped into his new venue for the evening. The room was stunning, high ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and a menu 10 times better than the one he'd been refused. As he walked toward his table, he turned to a nearby guest, one of the many who had left the other restaurant to be here. "Funny how things work out, isn't it?" he said, smirking. The guest chuckled. "You just turned getting rejected into the most exclusive event of the night." Trump shrugged. "That's called winning." And as the first course was served, the world outside was already buzzing, waiting to see how the restaurant that denied him would recover, if it ever could. It didn't take long for the story to explode. By the time Trump sat down at his table in the new venue, social media had already turned the night's events into a viral sensation. On Twitter, hashtags like #TrumpBanned, #RestaurantFails, and #TrumpWinsAgain were trending worldwide. The footage of Trump being denied service had been uploaded by multiple diners, each clip showing a different angle of the tense exchange. A former president walks into a restaurant, and they refuse to serve him. This is insane. I was there. The whole vibe changed when Trump walked in. The manager looked like he was sweating bullets. Refusing service to Trump was their biggest mistake. He just turned around and made his own event. Absolute power move. Meanwhile, Instagram was flooded with images from the rival dinner. High-profile guests had started posting selfies from Trump's exclusive gathering, showing off gourmet meals, elegant table settings, and a level of luxury that the first restaurant could only dream of. One photo stood out, a group of the restaurant's former staff smiling as they held up glasses of champagne. The caption read, "From waiters to VIPs in one night, cheers to real leadership." It wasn't just social media. By the next morning, every major news station had picked up the story. CNN ran a segment titled, "Restaurant Rejects Trump, Backlash Ensues," featuring a debate between political commentators. One side argued that businesses had the right to refuse service, while the other pointed out that rejecting a figure as influential as Trump was a dangerous move. Fox News took a different approach. Trump turns rejection into victory, the business lesson everyone needs to learn. The anchor chuckled as he recounted the events. He didn't just walk away, he walked up, and now the restaurant is left picking up the pieces. Meanwhile, conservative influencers and podcasters jumped in, calling for a boycott of the restaurant. Some even took it further, investigating the establishment's history, unearthing negative reviews and complaints from former employees. Sitting at his desk in Mar-a-Lago, Trump took to his Truth Social account, addressing the situation in classic Trump fashion. "Sad to see what happened last night. A once great restaurant, now run by weak and foolish management. But that's okay, because we had a much better dinner anyway. Great people, great food, huge success." Within minutes, the post racked up thousands of shares, likes, and comments. His supporters flooded the comments with messages of support, while critics accused him of playing the victim. But no matter what side people were on, one thing was clear. Trump had once again dominated the conversation. As the dust settled, the restaurant that denied Trump found itself in an unexpected crisis. Reservations plummeted. The once busy dining room now had empty tables, and the wait list that had stretched for weeks disappeared overnight. Online reviews tanked. Terrible management. Hope they enjoy the consequences of their own bad decision. Used to love this place, but if they can't respect all customers, they don't deserve my business. Went there once, wasn't even that good. Overpriced, mediocre service. Bye. The manager who had so confidently denied Trump was now facing the heat from the restaurant's owners, who had never expected such a backlash. They had wanted to make a statement, but they never anticipated that they would be the ones paying the price. As reporters gathered outside the restaurant, trying to get a statement, the manager finally stepped forward. His face was pale, his usual confidence shaken. When asked if he regretted the decision, he hesitated. I don't want to comment on that right now," he said before walking away. Meanwhile, just a few blocks away, Trump was still enjoying the aftermath of what had become one of the most talked-about business and social moves of the year. He had turned a rejection into an even bigger success. And as the world watched, one thing became certain. No matter how people felt about Trump, they couldn't ignore his ability to turn the tables. Days passed, but the firestorm refused to die down. The restaurant that had once been a hotspot for the city's elite was now in full damage control mode. What had been an attempt to take a stand had backfired spectacularly, turning into a PR nightmare. News reports revealed that in just 48 hours, the restaurant's reservations had plummeted by nearly 60%. Calls flooded in, not from people looking to book a table, but from outraged customers cancelling their plans. Online reviews continued to tank, and local business analysts predicted that the financial hit could take months, if not years, to recover from. Then came the final blow. One of the restaurant's investors, a powerful name in the hospitality industry, announced that he was pulling out. He had seen enough. Publicly, he framed it as restructuring, but insiders leaked the truth. He didn't want his name attached to a failing business. The restaurant, once thriving, was now struggling to stay afloat. Sensing that the walls were closing in, the restaurant's owner made a shocking decision. He reached out to Trump. In a carefully worded letter released to the press, he expressed regret over the incident. He claimed that the decision to deny service had been misinterpreted and that Trump was welcome to dine there any time. He even extended a personal invitation, hoping to undo the damage. The media pounced on the move. Was it genuine or just a desperate attempt to save the restaurant? When asked if he would return, Trump's response was swift and classic. "I've already found a better place. No need to go backward." With those words, the fate of the restaurant was sealed. Some businesses recover from controversy, some even thrive on it. But this was different. The restaurant had made a choice, and now it had to live with the consequences. Meanwhile, across town, Trump's new go-to dining spot was booming, packed with guests eager to be part of what was now the most talked-about venue in the city. In the end, it wasn't just a meal that had been denied that night. It was an opportunity, one the restaurant would never get back. As the dust settled, the night that started as a simple dinner plan had turned into something far bigger. What was meant to be a quiet meal became a statement about power, business, and consequences. One restaurant's decision had changed its fate forever, while Trump once again proved his ability to turn adversity into advantage. Sitting at his Mar-a-Lago estate days later, Trump leaned back in his chair, scrolling through the headlines. He had faced rejection before, by the media, by critics, by entire industries. But time and time again, he had found a way to come out on top. This wasn't just about a meal. It was about how one decision, one moment, could shape the narrative. For the restaurant, that moment had cost them everything. For Trump, it was just another example of what he had always believed. When one door closes, find a bigger, better one to walk through. With a satisfied smirk, he set his phone down and turned to his team. "Where are we eating tonight?" Because if one thing was certain, Trump would never have to beg for a table. The world was already setting one for him.